are all weirdos.
Weird science is the revolution. Weird science is the revolution.
Hello, everybody, and here we are to do a review of something that I didn't really plan on reviewing, but I figured, what the hey, let's do a Thundercats review, and I asked my man Zach to join me. What up, Zach?
What's up, Jim?
What's up? And we haven't done a lot of indie stuff, but
no, we have not.
Once I saw the Thundercats deal, I was interested, and a lot of people I think will be interested, mainly, I mean, it's Thundercats, but also because of how much hype and everybody wants to get a hold of the Energon stuff. Now, this is from Dynamite. That stuff's from Skybound, but still, it's that kind of in the same vein type of deal. I think a lot of people, if they like Transformers and G.I. Joe, they'll probably like Thundercats. So I'm sure that people would be like, oh, I might check that out. I might pick it up. Me and you, both of us, don't really have a ton of Thundercats knowledge or experience. I have zilch, really. You have a little more because of this, but it's recent, right?
Yeah, so after I read this first issue, I was like, well, I want to see more about this. So I went and watched the first 5 episodes of the original 80s cartoon, and I can see the appeal. I do. So, yeah.
So you're in. You are now a Thundercats superfan. Well,
Thundercats, ho!
Yes, the reason I asked you, you're a huge Declan Shelby fan, so I figured that that's why I would get you in here. But
you know
in
what,
the
Jim?
end, I think that it's weird. I can see, as you said, I can see the appeal, and I have a feeling that while this is written so that everybody can get involved, I think there's going to be a certain type of people who love Thundercats that probably will be more interested in this than just, you know, a walk-a-day a Jay or a John like me. I don't know what that means, but this is Thundercats #1. Oh, we could do that. And I'll tell you, I said I have zero experience or knowledge of Thundercats. It's funny because when I was in high school on our football team, it kind of became a thing that we used the Thundercats as this weird inspiration. There was a lot of Thundercat ho going on. I wanted no parts of it. I kept telling people it was nonsense. They used to get mad at me because I didn't want to get involved. Yeah, I'm like, well, what's happening here? This is crossing the streams there, pals. But they were really into it. It's even in our yearbook. It like has the symbol and stuff. I'm like, I don't get it. But Thundercats #1 is written by Declan Shelby. I'm also like a stick in the mud. And art by Drew Moss. So my biggest thing going in, as I said, was, okay, is this going to be, you know, as good in the vein of the whole Energon stuff, particularly the Transformers, but also the G.I. Joe stuff? And for me, it's not. It's not as good, mainly because this feels more all ages. This feels more basic. But again, I think it does a good job in giving you information, because after reading this first issue, I think that I'm pretty up to speed with a lot of things from just this. Like, you went and actually kind of verified that by going and watching the cartoon. And so you said to me that you think Declan Shelby is obviously, he's updating, you know, the start of the 80s cartoon, giving it a little more of a modern feel, but a lot of that is there from the beginning of the cartoon, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're exactly right. He's taken the 80s cartoon and he's like, okay, I'm going to take what didn't work from that series out. I'm going to add some new stuff and I'm going to polish it for the new generation. And I think he does a mostly good job here. It is a little basic, but you know what? It's the first issue, so I can deal with it for now.
It's funny, too, because, again, I hate to keep bringing it up, and I think that it's really not fair to the Thundercats for me to just keep saying, oh, man, I wasn't as excited as when I ended up reading that first issue of Transformers. Oh, I wasn't. It isn't really fair to compare the two. But again, the reason why I kind of went with that angle is I think that it's a great time for this book to come out.
Is.
That whole nostalgia deal is really popping with the comics. And I think it will do well because of that. It's whether or not people, when they read this, if they're going to continue. And I can see by the end why you would continue, and maybe will continue. If people like this review and want to hear more, we'll continue doing it. It just felt a little bit like, you know, I kind of got that feel again of, I'm an adult. Why am I reading this? Like, why am I doing Thundercats? But by the end, like I said, it does a really good job of giving you, you know, the ins and outs and knowing what's happening. And maybe that's why it is a lot more basic than I actually thought it would be. And maybe it will pick up after this first issue. But speaking of the story, you do end up seeing Thundera, the planet, it explodes. You end up having the Thundercats. go in stasis to get to the third Earth. And when they end up going, you have the stasis. It's kind of a tropey deal, but you end up having the stasis go down for Lion-O, so he actually ages up. So when they get to, what will be their new home, he's older. That sets up the conflict between him and Panthro, General Panthro, all that going on, but also shows you why, Lion-O is in charge, which also goes with the fact that you end up having a bit of a death. You end up having Jaga die on the way. It's weird, too, because we will get a little bit of Jaga by the end in what seems like a twist. But when you do these sort of things, obviously I want to get up to speed, but I think that what a lot of people who are Thundercats fans, they'll enjoy, hey, I get this. This is kind of the same, but there are twists that come up here, which I think that is where Declan shall be doing the best of both worlds. He wants to get new readers in, but he also wants to make some things exciting for, old Thundercats fans. Now, I will tell you, reading some reviews of this, you kind of are on thin ice when you're changing things up because of after the 80s cartoon, then in 2011, I think there's been some problem with the Thundercats, continuing, rebooting, redoing. And I think that Declan Shelby, as far as I can tell, which is not much, he's doing a good job of not going too far, though I want to see what happens with the one thing, and we'll get to that. But did you like that? Again, you only have watched the first bunch, but that's 5 more episodes than I watched. So it's pretty good, though.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Like you said, we just get the recap of the whole story where it's like, oh, Thundera exploded. We and a bunch of other ships try to escape, but the mutants of Plundar, which is the enemies of the Thunderians, kill the rest of the ships, but leave that ship alone. And in the TV show, they do explain it. It's like, oh, because they want the Sword of Omens, which is the sword that Lion-O owns. So Jaga puts the Thundercats under stasis, and he's like, I need to pilot the ship. The ship's damaged. Only a person can pilot it. I'm old anyway, and he's kind of like the leader, because at this point, Lion-O is a cub. And so he puts them all in stasis. He flies the rest of the way to Third Earth. Along the way, he dies, and when the Thundercats are awoken, Lion-O has aged because his stasis pod has malfunctioned. So now they're without a leader, and Lion-O, he is grown up now, but he still has the mentality of that cub. And so now we got to see Lion-O learn how to be a leader, even though he's still this young boy, technically.
Yeah, and it works out because, he doesn't really know how to lead, but he has to. He wants to take over for Jaga. And where you have in here Panthro trying to train him, taking the slow road. Hey, you got to learn this. But right away, you end up having Lion-O, who's like, I want to use the Sword of Omens. I want to use the sword. Teach me how to use the sword. It is very Star Wars-esque at the one point where he's fighting training discs and things like that. But he is very, impatient. But that plays out because he is a younger cub who has aged, but didn't really have the experience from that. And then when you get through this issue, you are going to just have, I'd say random scenes, but you're going to have scenes with, say, Tigra, who's out hunting, and you kind of get how Tigra is. And then while he's doing that, Chitara comes in and basically, hey, I'm fast. And you're like, all right, I get it. And then you have Wily Kit and Wily Cat show up to just be that sort of, comedy relief.
Yeah, there's no snarf here.
Yeah, no snarf. And it's funny because 2 people that I talked to, one being Jason, he's like, oh, have a snarfing good snarf. I'm like, I don't think there's any snarf here.
He's on the cover, but he does not show up in this book, and I am happy about it.
Yeah, so you have Wily Kit, Wily Cat. They are going to be doing their little comedy relief things. But in the meantime, the big thing going on is Lion-O wanting to use the Sword of Omens, saying, I'm going to use it. I don't care what you say. I'm the leader. And they still look at him as a cub, even though he has age, but he does go off to get the sword. And when that's happening, he ends up where, oh my God, we're being attacked. We're being attacked by the mutants. And so he does, use the Thundercat hoe. He ends up, energizing the sword, which does seem to then be a thing that wakes up Mumra. We'll find out by the end, where all of a sudden, Mumra's there. And these are characters like Mumra I do know of just because the name's cool. But it is cool to see that. But you're going to get a big battle between Lord Slythe and the other mutants while the Thundercats all join in. And it's nice to see them fight together.
Yeah.
One of the things that I like is Wily Kit and Wily Cat. I didn't think they were going to get involved because they are so young. They're there.
Yeah, they were involved in the 80s cartoon too, Jim, and they blew dust in people's faces.
Yeah, I would expect them to like untie shoes and things.
Yeah, they're very much like that in the 80s cartoon.
Yeah, but I do like where, Panthro was fighting with Lion-O, but now there's a battle, and they got to come together. The mutants are there, so they end up coming together. And you see at this point Panthro really leading the charge as the general, and it works out. It really works out well to show everybody the characters. And that's why what I do like about this, it reminds me a lot of a manga, where the first chapter you set up, the world a bit, but you want to give people the idea of what these characters are. And because a lot of things like this are archetypes, you are centering on those, which it works out. I mean, that's the way it goes. But that's when we end up having the biggest change. Spoiler alert coming up, but the big change, because I like where Lion-O, he's fighting Slythe, and Slythe's like, you can't be Lion-O. Like, I remember Lion-O was just like way big and scared out of his britches. Oh, wait a minute. I think you are scared. And they're fighting, and you go with what happens, because I think that most people will be shocked when this happens. Yeah,
so Lion-O and Slythe are fighting while the Thundercats are holding off the rest of the mutants, and they're fighting, and Lion-O's barely holding his own, and then all of a sudden, Slythe brings down his axe, and it shatters the Sword of Omens, which is because this is like Excalibur for the Thundercats, and it just shatters with one hit, and it's like, what the heck?
Yeah, and I like one thing where Slythe at one point he says, oh man, you're Lion-O, you're nothing. I'm going to fight you with my bare hands, while he has an axe in his hand. I'm like, so no bare hands there, Slythe. I don't know what you're going with. But when it shatters, you can tell everybody's like, oh my God. And Lion-O's like, holy crap. Like, he's just aghast at what had happened. And then he just kind of goes down to his knees, and we leave that scene at that. But then we go off to this mysterious figure we saw before Awaken, and we see that it is Mumra. And Mumra's like, the Eye of Thunder, I felt it. Such power, it's unmistakable. I gotta get me. Tell me where it is. Oh my God. And then you pull off, and where you have Mumra there is talking to somebody. Oh no, it's Ghost Jaga.
Oh no.
All right, that's crazy. Like, what's going on? And he looks pissed. He doesn't look like he's happy to be where he is, but that might be, something obviously not even might. We'll have to see what this means, what's going on. And it would be one thing if we saw Ghost Jaga kind of hanging, but obviously Mumra sees Jaga, knows Jaga, says Jaga, so we'll have to see if he's being controlled, if somehow his spirit was captured. I don't know. We'll have to see. But talking about it, I do like it a little more. It's just a little more basic than what I thought it might be. But that, again, that's kind of tainted a bit by the Energon stuff that is more gritty and is more, I'd hate to say adult, but it is kind of more mature than what this is. But this is an issue that's trying to get people into the Thundercats. Maybe the idea, too, is that the Thundercats, while popular, might not be as well known as the Transformers and the G.I. Joe stuff, probably because of the movies more than anything else. So at least you're getting that basic idea of this. The art's okay. The art's basic, too, but it does play off that cartoon look. So I can give that a bit of a pass as well to, maybe I like this a little more than I thought. But what would you give it?
I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10, Jim. I enjoyed it a lot. I would go higher, but you are right. It is definitely a little bit basic. It doesn't hook you as much as like Transformers did. Transformers came out punching you. This still has grabbed my attention, but it's not like a book I would have to read every time it comes out. This is a book I could definitely trade weight it.
I'll use Leonardo. It has my interest, but it might not have my attention yet, or vice versa. I can't remember. The famous quote that I might have messed up. I am interested to see maybe how this develops and how it goes. Hopefully, the fans of Thundercats will like it. It does a really good job. It does hold your hand, give you the characters, and it seems like it might be a lot of fun with some twists and turns that maybe you didn't expect. But that's that. I didn't give a score.
I was
I'm
giving it a 7. Score, Jim?
You gave it a 7.5. I'm going to give it a 7. I actually like it enough to continue on. Thanks for joining me, Zach.
No problem.
As always, thanks everybody, and we'll talk to you all later.
You are all weirdos.
Weird science is the revolution. Weird science is the revolution.